Okay, let's picture it. It's August 31st, 1997. We're in Paris, the city of light. But deep in the city, a black Mercedes S280 is absolutely flying along the Seine River. And inside, the most famous woman in the entire world, Princess Diana. You see, what was supposed to be just a quick drive to an apartment, well, it ended in a catastrophic crash that would ignite a firestorm of questions for decades.
So, let's break down this timeline, because it all happened so fast. At 20 past midnight, Diana and her partner Dodi Fayed slip out of the Ritz Hotel, desperately trying to get away from this swarm of paparazzi. Their driver, Henri Paul, he floors it, but just 3 minutes later, literally 3 minutes, the car loses control inside the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. The crash is just horrific. It takes until 1:30 in the morning for Diana to even be transported to the hospital, and then at 4 a.m., the world gets the unbelievable news. The Princess of Wales is gone.
The French authorities, they were quick to rule it a tragic but simple road accident. The blame was put squarely on the driver. But for millions of people around the world, the events of that night and everything leading up to it, it just didn't add up. And right there, the central question that defines her death to this day was born. Was this a terrible accident, or was it a perfectly planned conspiracy? So, in this explainer, we're going to walk through the whole story. We'll start right at the scene with the crash in Paris. Then we'll look back at how Diana became the people's princess, and we'll see how that public fairy tale started to crack. After that, we'll lay out the official story side by side with the conspiracy theories that just won't go away. And finally, we'll try to make sense of her unsettled legacy.
You know, to really get the impact of her death, you first have to understand her life. Diana Frances Spencer was born into one of Britain's most ancient aristocratic families, with deep ties to the royals. But her childhood was pretty tough, marked by a painful divorce that left her feeling quite empty. People who knew her described her as shy and quiet, but with this incredible kindness and a desire to help people, qualities that would of course later define her for the entire world.
And the world's fascination with her was, well, it was on a scale we'd never seen before. On July 29, 1981, an estimated 750 million people tuned in to watch the wedding of the century. It felt like a real-life fairy tale had just come true. This seemingly normal young woman had become the Princess of Wales, but behind all the glamour and the smiles, a much, much darker story was already taking shape.
All that global adoration, it couldn't get through the palace walls. The relationship that the world thought was perfect was, in reality, falling apart right from the very beginning. Behind the scenes, behind that famous smile, she was living a completely different and very painful life.
So on one hand, you have the public fairy tale. She was this icon of kindness, shaking hands with AIDS patients when everyone else was terrified to. She was a devoted mother to two future kings, William and Harry. But the private reality? She famously said she was in a marriage of 3, talking about Prince Charles's long-running affair with Camilla Parker Bowles. She was battling bulimia, depression, and just this profound loneliness that was the total opposite of her public image.
And at the heart of it all was Charles's affair. According to Diana's side of the story, when she finally confronted him about it, this was his alleged response. You can just imagine, these words reportedly just shook her to her core. The man she loved, the father of her kids, was basically telling her he wasn't going to give up his other woman. And with that, the fairy tale wasn't just cracking, it was absolutely shattered.
Soon enough, that private struggle exploded into a very public war. In 1992, a tell-all book came out that exposed her misery. Then, in 1995, she gave that bombshell Panorama interview that rocked the monarchy to its core, where she talked openly about everything. The divorce was final by 1996, and now she was free, starting a new life. And in the summer of 1997, she began that very public romance with the film producer Dodi Fayed.
And that brings us right back to that terrible night in Paris. With all these questions swirling, French authorities immediately launched an investigation. Years later, British police would do their own massive inquiry. So let's take a look at what they officially said happened.
The conclusions from both investigations were pretty stark, and they were basically the same. The French found that the driver, Henri Paul, was incredibly intoxicated. His blood alcohol was over 3.5 times the legal limit. On top of that, he was driving more than double the speed limit. The British investigation, which was called Operation Paget, spent years looking at every single piece of evidence, and they came to the exact same conclusion. A tragic accident caused by a drunk driver who was speeding, made worse by the paparazzi chasing them. And they were very clear, there was zero evidence of a conspiracy.
But of course, that official story was not the end of it, not even close. For a lot of people, including Dodi Fayed's billionaire father, Mohammed Al Fayed, it was all a giant cover-up. He tapped into this deep public distrust of the monarchy and the secret services, and he publicly accused them of murder, which just poured gasoline on a fire of conspiracy theories that are still burning today.
And maybe the most chilling piece of evidence for the theorists is this: a letter written by Diana herself just 10 months before she died. In it, she said she was afraid her ex-husband was planning a car accident to, well, get rid of her. For so many people, this wasn't just her being paranoid. It felt like a prophecy.
So the most famous theory paints a really dark picture. It goes like this. The royal family just could not accept the mother of a future king marrying a Muslim man, Dodi Fayed, and maybe even being pregnant with his child. So an order was given. MI6, the British intelligence agency, was brought in to stage an accident. Theorists claim the driver, Henri Paul, was secretly an agent, or that his blood samples were swapped to frame him. Then, a bright strobe light or this mysterious white Fiat Uno was used to cause the crash, and all the crucial CCTV footage from inside the tunnel was conveniently erased.
And these theories are all fueled by these nagging, unanswered questions. Like, how could Henri Paul look so steady on his feet in the hotel CCTV footage if he was supposedly that drunk? Why were all of the tunnel's cameras apparently turned off that night for maintenance? And this is a big one. Why did it take an ambulance 1 hour and 45 minutes to travel just 6 kilometers to the hospital? For people who believe in a conspiracy, these aren't just coincidences. They are proof of a plot.
So you've got the official story on one side and this assassination plot on the other. After years of investigations and furious public debate, a final legal verdict was actually reached in Britain. So let's break down what that verdict really means.
Right, so in 2008, a British inquest jury came back with a verdict of unlawful killing. Now, this is a really crucial legal term. It does not mean murder. It doesn't mean assassination. What it means is that the deaths were caused by the grossly negligent actions of other people. So, who did the jury say was responsible?
In the end, the jury pointed their fingers at 2 main factors, so the blame was shared. The biggest piece of the blame, they said, was on the driver, Henri Paul, for his grossly negligent driving while he was drunk. But, and this is key, the jury also blamed the paparazzi vehicles for their dangerous chase, which helped cause the crash. And importantly, the verdict flat out rejected the idea of a conspiracy.
So this is where we're left. The official legal conclusion is that Diana's death was a tragic but preventable accident. The enduring belief for millions, though, is that it was a targeted assassination carried out by the establishment. You have 2 completely opposite stories that continue to define her legacy.
And that really brings us to our final thought. After all these exhaustive investigations and a very clear legal verdict, why does the death of Princess Diana still feel so unresolved for millions of people? Maybe it's because her life was like a modern fairy tale that ended like a dark Greek tragedy, and it left us with a story that for so many is just too painful and frankly too strange to have been a simple accident.